What's up, YouTube? I hope you all are doing well. Today we are talking about the A7S III in this major announcement. If you're new to the channel, my name is Anson. This channel is here for to talk about budget gear for budget-conscious filmmakers, with the exception of today, because we're talking about the A7S III. If you're unfamiliar, a lot of you know me as a Micro Four Thirds user. This channel is primarily based in Micro Four Thirds, I primarily talk about stuff like the GH5 and the Blackmagic Pocket 4K and lenses for those systems. But I started this channel with Sony, and so I was really excited to see Sony come out swinging with the A7S III. Now, I'm actually not going to be talking about this by myself. I actually have a friend of mine, Pav, he actually runs another gear review channel, Pav SZ. And if you're not familiar with his channel, like I said, it is a gear review channel. He is actually a little bit more Sony centric. He owns an A7S II, actually just bought a Nikon Z6, and does do some reviews on other systems. He actually just dropped a video about the Fuji X-T4, so make sure, I'm going to leave a card up here once the video gets done processing. Check that out if you're interested in the X-T4 and what he thinks about it, and give him some love. So without further ado, we're going to cut over to Pav. Pav, how are you doing today, man?
Wait, I'm live. My first time ever live. So thank you for having me. Yes,
First
I'm very
time
nervous.
live.
I feel starstruck talking to you here on the live channel, on the live feed.
Starstruck.
Who,
So
who
Pav
are you
always talks
sponsored
about.
by?
I'm not sponsored by Bubbly from
I'm not
Target.
sponsored by Coke either.
Oh man. So
Right.
Pav, uh, tell a little bit about yourself. What's your experience with Sony before we get into a little bit about the A7S III?
Well, I'm a commercial and lifestyle photographer and filmmaker, and I've been shooting with A7S II and A7 III, or A7S II specifically, for the last 3 years. It's probably it is my number one camera for all the video work. And yes, just like everyone else, I was very curious to see what Sony has got on offer today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if again, like I said at the beginning, I've shot on Sony before. I originally started with the A6300. God, I've actually owned a lot of Sonys. I've had this A6300, the A7 III. I had the 6000 for a while, right before I got completely out of the Sony system. So between Pav and I, we have a lot of experience in Sony, Pav, what are your initial? Are you excited about this camera? What are some of your initial thoughts on the camera?
I don't know. I've seen some specs leaked before, so I had some expectations. But I must say, when I was watching it today, the announcement, the intro video they put in, it put my hair standing on my arms. I want that camera really badly. So if anyone wants this one, you can have it.
Man, I'll tell you what, I loved how they did the announcement. And that's not even like we haven't even
Yes.
approached the subject of how they actually did the announcement. I hate to say I was actually in a meeting watching the announcement because this is obviously not my day job. And so I was in a meeting watching the announcement, and I'm sitting there like, oh, I'm eating it all up, and like 15 minutes goes by, and I'm like, holy crap, like it's done.
Yeah.
It was short and sweet and just to the point of like, this is what we're
Yeah.
offering, this is what's happening. And I felt like they did a really good job of it. So even as somebody that is, not normally watching a lot of these announcements, or even somebody that can't watch with volume on, it was still pretty awesome. So yeah, I know I'm excited about the camera. I think it's dope. So obviously you guys are here potentially to talk about like what is it offering. And so if you're here, some of the specs, Pav and I can talk about some of the specs, and we'll kind of go through our list of what Sony's offering
Yeah.
from it. And then let's talk about like some of our favorites. So just kind of running through some bullet points. So we have 4K 120, 240 in 1080. Crazy. 10-bit 422 in all modes. So I know with the GH5, obviously this is no comparison, but with the GH5, like you have some modes that are in 8-bit and 4, I think 420 even. but 10-bit 422 on everything. A new it takes up a color science of the FX9, the S-Cine. I was doing a little bit of research on that before the stream. Basically, some of the highlights that I saw from that
The
picture pro
Venice
from that
camera.
color science. Yeah, in the Venice. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Is a little bit better highlight roll off, a little bit better skin tones, and that's amazing to me because I mean, Sony's often got criticized for their color science, and so seeing that is really awesome. Um, what's up, Mark? Mark, you made it. Um, and so ISO up to 409,600. I gotta say, I mean, obviously, let's see what that looks like when it actually gets in here. But that's an absurd number. So that's one dual card slot that supports SD and CFast Express, no record limit, and no overheating. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But the big kicker for YouTubers, flip screen, fully articulating flip screen. And so it's finally here. Touch, I believe I saw a
Touchscreen,
couple of
yeah.
details. Touch screen menu. So like what I'm used to with the GH5, being able to touch all my settings and everything. I don't know how. I'm very much spoiled with the Blackmagic being fully touchscreen. So like I don't know how it'll compare, but I'm interested in that. And then a couple other details is 16-bit RAW over HDMI. Holy crap! So if you have an Atomos Ninja, so I
Yes, I
think
did.
it's Atomos Ninja. You can do 16-bit RAW like externally. That's insane. And I want to talk about that here in a little bit too, as far as like external RAW versus internal RAW and it not being there. But then I do want to mention the last thing is the price, and Pav, you can confirm with me. $3,500 US is what I saw.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people were saying like if it's $4,000, no way. If it's close to that, no way. And I think that is a price point that and maybe this is the first thing we talk about, right? Is with all those things, is the price point aggressive enough? Do you think the price is aggressive enough? I mean, I know we've talked a little bit before this, and I know you definitely you talked about wanting the camera, but the price may be a factor. Do you feel like this is competitively priced considering what Canon just
Yeah.
put out like a month ago?
Well, I understand where they're coming from because they are targeting professional filmmakers. The FS5 owners and
Yep.
FS9 owners as a small B-roll camera. But saying that they nailed it with the price of A7 III, and I was
Mm-hmm.
hoping it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be somewhere, maybe not that price, but close to it. So yeah, $1,000 cheaper than it is now. But they went for
Yeah.
the pro price for the pro camera.
How much was the A7S II when it was launched? Was it comparable? Was it comparable in that price
It was
range?
about 1,000 cheaper. Yeah,
Oh, was it? So it was like 2,500 when it came
yeah.
out.
I think here in UK it came out as just about £2,500. Yeah,
Interesting.
so
Yeah,
about
I
three and a
mean,
half thousand. Yeah,
don't get me wrong, it's packing a punch. It's packing a punch,
yeah,
and I think that it's doing a lot. But here's honestly, I came into the stream thinking that Sony didn't nail this announcement, like it flopped, and I don't think so. I don't think it did. I think if anything, it exceeded the expectations that I had for it. I mean, I think a couple weeks ago on a live stream, I said there's no way they're doing 4K. I think I even questioned whether they're going to do 4K 60, and they're offering 4K 120, which is awesome. And so I definitely think it lived up to a hype. But my question becomes then, okay, so we have Canon R5, R6, and I don't. These are obviously two different systems, two different cameras.
yeah,
But with the R5 doing 8K, 4K, 120, all these different things, internal RAW, everything is. Do we think that this is going to? Is it more supposed? I mean, price range is supposed to compete with the R5 if we're looking
yeah.
at price. But do you think it competes with the R5?
Yeah, I think it's a different market completely because with the 41 million pixels on R5 or R6, one of them anyway. Yeah, to me they feel like a cameras targeted for Canon users who do photography as well, when A7S III is specifically targeted at the videographers than photographers.
Yeah.
So they obviously, yeah, they hardly they mention photography in that on that announcement, but it was 99% all video. When Canon is different type of camera, it's more rounded, and I think that's why they got issues with it now. They're overheating, and they try to cram too much too quickly in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, and that's the point that one point I wanted to make is I feel like Sony is taking this approach of quality versus quantity and that kind of whole adage because like Canon's packing in the megapixels, the resolution, but to what extent? Like we're seeing, I mean, there's joke after joke after joke and criticism of overheating in 4K, and it's not even overheating in 8K, it's overheating in 4K
Yeah,
and having huge issues. And I feel like that's, and me personally, um, the me personally, I feel like Sony learned a lot from preceding cameras. They learned a lot from the A7 III. They learned a lot from prior cameras, and so that is something I feel like they brought to the table. Is okay. We're not going to do 8K. We're not even going to do 6K. We're going to
oh,
do 4K, and we're going to do 4K well.
well, yeah,
And I think that's the big kicker there. Um, so you have the we're going to do 4K well, and I think that's where the dividing line is, right? I think that's where the difference, the big difference is. So I
yeah.
th-
So as I said, it feels like they tried to put too much in in those cameras too quickly, when Sony held back for so long to make sure when the camera comes out, it's gonna be right. And obviously, there's a videos floating today as well after the announcement, like we talked about earlier. Matti Hapoya and Daniel
yeah,
Schiffer, they reviewed this is pre-release prototype, and that wasn't overheating at all.
yeah.
So, so it's a good sign that that camera is gonna do what it says is doing.
Are you surprised that Matty got the camera before Daniel Schiffer did? I know that's a whole. I
Yeah,
mean, Daniel Schiffer's known for his Sony footage and his Sony shooting.
Sony
I
shooting.
was I
Yeah,
was personally surprised that Matty got his hands on it before he did. Now Matty is almost at 1 million subscribers, whereas I think Daniel's still probably like mid hundreds somewhere in that, which is not like it's he's still a decently sized YouTuber. And I thought it was funny too, and this is obviously not the point of the video, but I thought it was funny too that he didn't get the R5, R6, but he did get the A7S III. So I
yeah.
thought that was funny.
Maybe it may be to show to show Canon user being wowed by it, and he was. So so it's doing his job. It's not someone not a Sony lover boy. Saying this is
Right.
amazing. It's actually someone who uses Canon full time and other
Yep.
cameras, and not
Yep.
using Sony, saying that's amazing. It's a big advertising, big marketing plan here.
So
It looks like it.
Mark in the chat made a good point. He said it's a safe release while still being forward thinking, and I think that's a great summary of that. It is a very safe release, and I think Sony learned a lot from, like I said before, Sony learned a lot from the A7 III, and so they put in specs that they know they can handle. While
Yeah,
Canon is over here, and I applaud Canon. I said this in the Canon live stream I had. Everybody putting out these cameras, Canon putting out the R5, R6, Sony putting out the A7S III, freaking Blackmagic putting out the Ursa Mini Pro for with 12K. Like everybody's pushing the camera industry, and everybody can benefit from that. Um, and so it's really great. But I feel like there was a lot of criticism with Canon that they were making these safe launches, not putting full read 4K, cropping in 4K. People that picked up the EOS R
yeah,
basically didn't shoot 4K. I mean, that was the whole reason why Matty Habuya has, for the last year or so, primarily shot in 1080p, and so they've been, a
yeah,
big, it's been a big hurdle. And then Canon comes out this year with these crazy specs where we're gonna throw. They actually did a very Sony move,
yeah.
in what would prior be a Sony move, where we're gonna throw all these specs at you, but then things start coming out, and I don't want to. It's not a bash Canon bash Sony scenario. Hell, I'm a Panasonic and Blackmagic user. I don't really care. But at the same time, like it's yeah, it's this is a very Sony move. They threw everything into the camera, and now it's
Yeah.
overheating. People are saying all over the place like I'm canceling my pre-order or things like that. And then Sony comes out with the Canon move of like, okay, these are specs we can handle, and we're gonna do it
Yeah.
well, and we're gonna take those
Safe.
jabs by not overheating. So
Yeah, but it's also a question: do you really need 8K, 12K video, and the problems that come with it? I mean, 16 bits, 4:2, raw video, it's gonna be huge
mhm,
files. We're talking about a
mhm,
gigabytes of storage just to be
yeah,
able to shoot it.
yeah,
So I don't think that it's not targeted at that market, not that high end broadcast. Maybe it is, but it's not as a main camera. They clearly said it as a camera supporting FS9 or FS5, which is that's where it sits perfectly
yeah,
with
yeah.
the
I
with
mean,
the color science working with it and the formats it shoots at, the all eye as well. Broadcast quality. Expansion from Sony formats previously. I think
mhm,
it's a really well thought through decision. Why they've done this
yeah,
with that camera
yeah.
and the 12
I,
million pixels. It clearly how many times you see it on social media when people say I'm not really interested in photography. I've got an A7 III just for video.
yeah, yep,
It's that crowd,
yep.
professional, but not maybe a main camera for broadcast production.
And I feel like the A7S series has always been that way. I feel like the A7S series has always been the camera for video people. It's
Yeah,
basically like what the 5D Mark II and maybe Mark III was for Canon, where this is our DSLR or mirrorless form factor that's geared towards video people. And that's why I felt like the A7S series, even more than like the
yeah,
A7 III, and everybody touted the A7 III for being such a great video camera. I mean, that's the one I sold to go
yeah.
into GH5 and Blackmagic because at the end of the day, like it suffered in codecs, it suffered in some of these color sciences.
Yeah.
The A7 III had decent color sciences. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's
8
it's
bits. So
just
that was the biggest limitation.
but the A7 III, let's be fair, is kind of like I mean, it's the whole thing that people were saying about the EOS R. It's the was it the jack of all trades, the master of none, and that's what the A7 III was. It is it's a
No.
great hybrid camera, but it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't excel in video,
Dedicated. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And
It's
it
it's
doesn't
it's a hybrid camera. Exactly.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So we're saying the same thing. So no, that's awesome. Now, do you? So one of the things that kind of I'm not upset about no 6K, no 8K. I'm not upset about that.
I'm
What
not.
I am disappointed in is no internal RAW. Having the Black Magic, and I get it, like, it's a bigger sensor, and so maybe it's way more data. I think Sony tends to play it safe as far as like size of the files and things like that.
Yeah.
But that was one thing that disappointed me was no internal RAW. But other than
Yeah,
that, like,
I'm the opposite because I always record externally on all the cameras. So I always use Ninja 5 for recording. So it's like no difference. I can just plug it in and switch to RAW. So it's not. But also, how big and how many memory cards do you need, to process that internally? Obviously, with the Blackmagic, you're recording to external hard drive already.
yeah.
So it's that limitation of the storage. I think it makes sense. It's a shame there is no 120 frames per second 4K RAW, externally for those special moments when you need that.
What was the external frame rate? Was it still
60,
60? Okay.
60, yeah,
I don't
still
the
good.
the R5 does I feel like that still does that does 124K internal, but I don't know if it's in RAW.
Yeah,
It might be in RAW.
not sure.
I'm not
I
sure
haven't
either.
researched. I don't know
What's
to know
that?
that. I haven't researched Canon enough to know that exactly, but as I said before, it's a different kind of tool completely. What A7S III is gonna be this. announced is a different camera than the Canon R5 or an R6. It's not meant for the same shooter.
Yeah. You know, AKA Pav hasn't been sent the R5. Pav gets sent a lot of really good cameras. He hasn't been sent it, so he hasn't
No,
researched the R5. He's
and
like,
I'm not
I'll
intending
care
to.
about it when I test it. Um, so 8K up to 30 on the R5. RAW is 8K up to 30. So even with the R5, higher frame rates may not support RAW. So I
Yeah.
mean, those are just huge files. I mean, talking about Blackmagic, let's be real. B-RAW is a very, very compressed version of RAW. And so saying that, well, the Blackmagic can do this, if you're dealing with like ProRes RAW and stuff like that, like it may be a different world. And so, I don't want to sit here and be like, well, Canon and Sony can't shoot 60, frames per second, 4K RAW, but my Blackmagic can. It's a different world.
Yeah, it is.
It's that being said, I think every camera should support B-roll because it's an amazing, amazing format for
Yeah,
for files.
I think it's great to have the option externally. It's not. I mean, Ninja 5 is not that expensive. Yes, it is. If you're buying camera and lenses and Ninja 5 at the same time, it makes a
Hmm.
difference. But like me and you, when you buy bits of kit, over a period of time, that's some that sub $500, purchase of something which can give you a completely new recording format from the camera you already got. It's a very good investment. I already got one, so it's like, yeah, it's no brainer. Whatever camera I plug into it and can do raw throw, just straight to it. Great.
And you can record to an SSD with the Ninja 5, right?
Yes, that's what it's doing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. See, that's
and
the
it's
other
doing
thing.
ProRes as well, so it's easy to edit on Mac.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's true. Because I think one thing, and I didn't actually see a confirmation of this, but knowing that I think I saw that the A7S III has the USB-C port, but it's only for charging, not data transmission, unless
Okay,
it's like
this
maybe
A7 III on A7S III.
A7S III.
Okay,
So not, and I assume it could probably be some type of data transfer just to like get it from the computer or from the camera
file.
to the computer, but to have a live transfer of those files, I think is what it's not supporting. And so something like having the Atomos would be helpful in that scenario.
I think so.
So
Makes sense. It still gives you good formats and good quality and those frame rates eternally.
yeah, yeah,
And then if you want more, you just have to plug something into it. It's as simple as that.
yeah.
But yeah, if you get the point that you do need 16-bit raw files, I think you're doing it professionally. It's not doing video for your Facebook post, is it?
Unless you're me and you buy a Blackmagic and you're like, I need to justify this expense, and it's just like all the videos of your kid is in raw files, 4K. They're massive just for like playing outside.
Maybe someone shoots a 4K 10-bit 16-bit for Instagram stories. I don't know. Maybe it works for someone,
It's
but
possible.
it's that mentality. If you're doing it for pretty much everything, including high-end 4K TVs,
Hmm.
what camera does internally will be good enough. If you
Yep,
want to do high-end broadcast, it's a $500 investment to get a Ninja 5. It's not
that's true. It's
not really
it's
the
like it's pennies, pennies.
yeah, it is.
Well, if you're just joining us, Pav and I are talking about our reactions to the A7S III. I'll say it again. Pav is a great. He has a great channel. Reviews a lot of good camera gear. Pav, you just did a video on the XT4. I don't think I talked to you all that much this week on your thoughts on it, but obviously this is Sony stream, so I don't want to talk about what we think about Fuji or Panasonic or things like that. But that being said, if you are just joining us, Pav is here talking with me, just kind of our reactions about the A7S III, our excitement, our disappointment. And so I will be leaving a card either at the end of the video or during the video, linking to Pav's video from today. So, okay, we've listed off some of the specs, right? Um, Pav, what are some of your favorite specs that we have right now?
I think this the frame rate 120. I presume it's no crop. They haven't mentioned that, but I presume the 120 and 240 has got no crop. Those I think those are really really cool. Cool. The 60 frames per second 4K. I'm very happy with that. The 4 to 210 bit. Yeah, absolutely amazing. And obviously they mentioned S-Log quite a few times in a in that preview. I shoot everything S-Log 3, and to have that extra dynamic range. The Ninja 5, the A7S2 gives you that extra dynamic range because of ProRes files. But that 10 bit, possibly 16 bit, and 4 to 2, yeah, it's going to be huge for color grading. And also the autofocus. I think the autofocus is probably the most exciting. There was some tricky shots they shot in that demo, and
Yeah.
like walking towards a person and then and turning around and walking backwards with a so busy background and the focus was still on. It's just insane. So
There are
there's a
two
lot of things, new things.
Yeah, there are two companies that do autofocus well. Maybe Olympus, but obviously RIP. Canon and Sony. I mean, I've seen. I know John was on the stream. I don't know if he's still on the stream, but he's a big XT4 user, or XT3, XT4. Just did some reviews on the GX100. Big Fuji user. I've
Right.
seen a lot of negative things about autofocus on Fuji. Now, Pop, I've been scrambling to get everything together for this morning, so I haven't had time to check it out. But that's a struggle for almost every camera system is
Yeah.
autofocus. And so having something like this with these amount of specs, I can all day say like, yeah, the Blackmagic does this, the GH5 does this, the Z6 does that, and we can talk about that all day. But these two
Yeah.
systems offer some of the best autofocus,
Yeah.
and so definitely something not to sleep on there. Something else not to sleep on, and I thought it was interesting. I can't remember if I saw it on the stream or on
Rumors.
somewhere like online. The fact that they're just boasting, not necessarily boasting, but talking about the fact that all of their lenses and all of their cameras support E-mount
Yeah.
is something that I know, me personally, I've taken for granted. When I was in the Sony system, knowing that I could fit all of my lenses onto all of my Sonys,
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it. But now being in stuff like in a Panasonic system or a Blackmagic system or even Canon, you have different mounts in all of their cameras. I mean, the Canon R5, R6, the EOS R are all obviously RF mounts. You have the M mounts with Canon as well. You still have, I think you still even have some DSLRs that support the EF mount, and so you have all these different mounts in that system. You have the even Panasonic. You have the full frame mount. I can't remember which mount they're using for that one, but then you also have Micro
Yeah.
Four Thirds. It's all over the place. The fact that Sony offers all of their cameras.
Consistency. Yeah.
Yeah, all of their cameras. From the A6100, let's just talk about their current lineup. From the
Yeah.
A6100 to the FX9, all of them are E-mount.
Yeah.
And that is insane. Now, that means, and where that also means, even for me as a Micro Four Thirds user, E-mount can actually take Micro Four Thirds lenses with a small adapter. And so even me as a Blackmagic user can take some of my, I mean, there are some, like I have a Rokinon that's technically a full frame lens that is a Micro Four Thirds mount. I can take that and I can put that on the A7
Shoot. Yeah.
S3.
Yeah.
I can take some of these like inexpensive Seven Artisans lenses, and yes, I may have to go into crop mode. You just did a Seven Artisans review
Yeah.
of the 55 millimeter. A great review, by the way. You should check that out as well.
And that's a crop lens, and I've used it on a full frame camera.
Yeah, yeah,
It still works.
and the fact that I don't have to re-up and buy all this different system. I could take all my Micro Four Thirds glass and use it on the Sony system, is actually more of a reason. Like if I were to look at full frame again,
Yeah.
I'd probably go with the A7S3 over something like the R5, R6, and not to mention the fact that in its own system there's that whole consistency. I mean, it was
Yeah,
only a few years ago that everybody was knocking on E-mount, like, oh, there's no E-mount glass, and now it's like this is probably
57. They
yeah.
mentioned a few times 57 lenses, and their native lenses. Obviously, there's a Sigma as well, and
Hmm.
as you mentioned, other brands like Rockin and Samyang in Europe. Seven Artisans. There's lots of Viltrox. They do as well Sony lenses, but so there's a lot of choice. But the 57 they do the Sony lenses, they are good, and some of them are very very good. But you pay premium for them.
You do pay a premium for them. Oh, was that 70, 200, 2.8
Yeah,
that you tested a few weeks ago?
yeah,
I'd
yeah. You could buy
sell
another
my
camera for the
house.
price of them. But it's a good lens. It's like there is quality. So if you are investing in the camera, and especially you're going to do professional filmmaking, the A7S III, it's getting at least one native good quality lens is no brainer.
And there's that whole saying of like, date the camera, marry the lenses. And so if that's kind of the logic that you take, I mean, Sony systems should absolutely be one to look into because not only yes, do they have this entire system supports E-mount, they do have some really quality glass. Like to this day, one of my favorite lenses is the 18 to oh god,
What is
the
it?
18 to 105.
105, yeah, the crop sensor one.
The crop sensor one, 18 to
Yeah,
105
that
f4.
with like internal zooming, isn't it? Yeah,
Internal
it's a nice
zoom,
lens.
constant f4.
Yeah,
It was a very big YouTube favorite for a long time, and I used it on my A6300, and unfortunately sold it when I bought my A7 III just because, in my mind I was like, I've got to own full frame glass now. I can't own
yeah,
crop sensor glass. And so, but that's a good one. Then you also go into full frame and you have stuff like the 24 to 105 or, the 24 to 70 I mean, one that you did was a Sigma one.
yeah.
And so it's just amazing. And so that's something to not sleep on. Like it's,
Yeah, there's another thing to mention when what you just said. It's that you saw the lens, which was a crop sensor lens, because you bought a full frame camera, but
mhm,
most of stuff you do is filming. And if you're filming with any A7 series, crop sensor lens make no difference to video
right,
whatsoever because using the
right.
only it's cropping it anyway when you're doing HD or 4K video.
Yeah. Yeah. I should have kept it. That was a
So
beautiful
no
lens.
difference into your frame if you're using the sensor lens.
Yeah, yeah, and so it's. I think that's something I just saw it pop up on the screen, and I was just like, that is an amazing selling point. Sony has done a really good job at keeping. Like I said, a few years ago, everybody was knocking on E-mount. Like, there's nothing for it. Now there's plenty for
Yeah.
it, natively and third party. Um, the and so that's definitely something to consider there. Mark was saying Sigma does the 24 to 70 so well. It's my favorite EF mount used religiously
It's
on my
mine.
EOS R. Do you have the 24 to 70 from Sigma?
Me?
Yeah.
I had it for 4 weeks and I loved it so much, but I didn't buy it yet.
Oh yeah.
It is my favorite lens. It's for sure. It's the best lens I've used. I mean, third-party lens for Sony E-mount is definitely the best lens I've ever had on a camera.
I'm trying to justify reviewing it on my channel, but I'm like, it's a Sony Sony lens, or the one I would be using would be Sony, and it's full frame, and I'm like, neither one of those makes sense in my channel's like environment, and so, but like I've been wanting to hit up Sigma and be like, hey, can you guys send me this lens? And I just haven't had any that come to mind I want to test lately, so. I love,
Yeah.
yeah. What I did see from what you tested, amazing lens, amazing lens. And then Mark was also mentioning, great point. Even Canon has the EFS, RF, EF. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
honestly, I took that for granted when I left Sony. Is the fact that they have all of their glass and all of their major cameras, and even not major cameras like freaking the 5100 has E mount.
Is it?
Like this, yeah.
All right. Because what was it called? What was it? The Sony mount before that? The next cameras.
Wasn't it
Was it
the
next
was the
mount?
A mount?
Was
Oh
it
well,
no?
Nex and E kind of. I never really understood the difference of why they would refer it to the NEX mount versus the E mount, but it's the same.
All right. Okay. So it was E
So
mount. So
yeah,
A
it was
mount
E
was
mount.
obviously Minolta, wasn't it? When they bought Minolta out, that was the A mount. Still
Those are some beautiful
adaptable. You
lenses
could still
too.
use those on A7.
I
systems.
know. One of the Rokinons I bought was for the A mount, and I sadly had to return it because I sold my. Was that when I sold my A7 III? I think it was. Yeah, the 14 millimeter fisheye. But you remember oh man, that was a fun time because I tried to make a an internal ND in the adapter. Now
Oh yes, I
it
remember that.
worked. It worked, and then I sold the lens. So
Waste of time.
it was a good learning experience.
Yeah,
Good
but
learning
yes, it's the same.
experience.
You mentioned it before. I do use Nikon, which I'm actually uh, looking at now, and they've changed the mounts as well.
Hmm.
Recently with the Z system, so like Canon did with the R system, and it makes you think. Yeah. So if you are a Sony user and you bought ever Sony lens and you got it, and you buy a new camera, it's still gonna work, which is a big deal.
Right, but I mean that's the part of I think Sony. I think Panasonic was. If I remember this correctly in history, Panasonic was like the one of the leaders in mirrorless, and then Sony picked it up, and they've just been running with it for a while. And I
Yeah.
think the only other system that may be as vast is probably, I mean, other EF is all over the place, but I'm talking like mirrorless is Micro Four Thirds, just because like Olympus used Micro Four Thirds, Panasonic
Yeah.
used Micro Four Thirds, and so and obviously stuff like Blackmagic. So E
Yeah, but
mount
I think that the Fuji is definitely coming on with the video. Is the I think X-T3 and X-T4 they're competing. The X-T4, I was very impressed with the 240 frames per second in full HD as well, and 4K 60. So and the log recording. So it's not that again professional target audience for these. It's more enthusiast or semi-professional or
sure,
professional who does videos for web, but it's not far behind really with a spec.
yeah. So excuse me. Then that leads me to I like the shameless plug on Pav has an XT4 video live right now. Go watch it. Um,
Yes, do watch it and click the like as well and subscribe when you're there. I'm stealing your audience. Sorry.
it's funny that no, we share. Actually, I don't think we share much of an audience anymore. I mean, I think some of my Sony people are still here, but I think
I'll take them.
whenever, yes, go over to Pav. Pav, funny story about Pav. We always used to joke that he was my Maddie to me being Peter McKinnon, and then like a couple months ago, he had this what was it?
Yeah.
The Panasonic, which camcorder was it?
Panasonic camcorder.
Yeah,
Oh
is
god,
it?
it's gonna that is HCX 1500.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
think. Or
so
HXC, one of
did
them.
we ever figure out like what like something happened in the algorithm where that one was getting pushed a lot, and he just like leapfrogged me. So now I'm his Maddie to Peter, and so our dynamic has been, but pretty
In
crazy,
a
pretty fun.
normal world, people would say Batman and Robin, but in the YouTube world, is Matty and Peter.
Good point. Good point. No, that's awesome. All right. Well, that being said, all right. So let's talk about, in your honest opinion, who should buy this camera?
Pro.
Pro?
I said that already. I think that camera is definitely for someone who is intending to do high end video. It's there. It does all these bit rates, the 42s and the high frame rates and all this. It literally makes no difference to someone who does the videos for Instagram. It literally none. It's just any Sony camera will do it. Even A6000 will do it for that. But when you need
Very true.
that number crunching quality, when someone actually TV production, someone will actually check if your video is to the right standard to be broadcast at high end, that camera will do it. And I think that camera is definitely, I mean, I'm saying that, but yeah, if you got money to spend that on the camera, get it, but not before me. I'll
You
have to wait
know,
longer if you order it now. So don't do it.
I gotta hit up Lens Rentals and be like, can I rent the A7S III just to kind of see? Um, yeah, I it's funny. I will often talk about cameras and be like, yes, professionals like the Blackmagic. If you're a professional filmmaker,
Yeah.
or someone that's getting into being a professional filmmaker buy that. I'm not a professional filmmaker. I own a Blackmagic, so I can't really say like, hey, only professionals.
Yeah,
But
but that's what I'm
yes,
saying. You could afford it, so you want
sure,
to have that option, to play with it.
sure,
To I'm talking about people who will spend every last penny they got,
yeah,
and for that camera because everyone says it's the most amazing camera right now, but it will make no difference to what they do.
yep.
You know what you're doing with your filming and your reviews and everything you do. I'm talking about people who buy gear because someone else said is the best camera at the moment, and they will spend all the money on it.
And that's what I said in the Canon. It's either the Canon live stream or the. There's been too many cameras that have been announced, but camera live stream. It was either the Canon live stream or the Blackmagic live stream, where you know, should you buy this camera? Not necessarily, but don't think that because you can't. Maybe you can't because of budget, or can't just because like it doesn't make sense for you. Just because you can't buy this camera doesn't it still benefits you, because what happens is a trickle down effect. You get the A7S III that offers all these things and have this low light beast, and what that means is direct advantage is the A7S II is cheaper, because it's older, it's the previous
Bad
version,
news for me.
and it's still a workhorse.
Yeah.
Um, but then you also have the fact that, what about next year when the A6700 comes out and they're trying to make
874.
that, yeah, or A74,
Yeah.
when they're trying to pack all these things that they're putting in the A7S III into the more of their consumer prosumer base,
Yeah.
that still benefits from it. It's that trickle down effect. So
Yeah.
even though,
They will.
yeah, because they did that with the
A9.
A7 III. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they done it with A7R4 using the A9 engine pretty much to drive everything in it. So it's and the A6600. The autofocusing went to A7R4, the bigger camera after.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely going to happen. But that's what I'm saying. This is my point. Do you really need all those functions? I put different analogy here because I have been asked like a million times in my career over 20 years as a photographer, which camera should I buy? And people keep asking me that question all the time. And there's this trend going on with people because they can't afford it. They buy this camera, they will have a play with it. They've got no idea what they're doing, and it's going to go in the closet,
Yep.
in a box, and when
Yep.
they're ready next time, which is never. And
Yep.
that's the most common purchase because it's common, must be brilliant. I'm going to buy it, and then I'm not going to use it because I've got no idea how. That camera
Yep.
is not for that person. If you are going to learn, you're going to commit to it and invest the money as a good toy, not a toy as a disposable toy. A toy you're gonna play with. It's for anyone then.
Yeah, it's
Use it.
funny.
You're gonna,
There was somebody that did a review. I think it was like on a Red camera. I can't remember who did it. It probably is. I don't even remember. I'm not going to try to speculate who did it. But they were talking about Red, and they were talking about the fact that, excuse me, fighting off a cold. But they were talking about the fact that, like, okay, so if you put a Red in a novice filmmaker's hands, that doesn't magically produce an amazing film.
no.
You put an iPhone in a legit cinematographer, somebody that has been in the business, they will make better content than somebody that has no idea what they're doing with the camera that's
Yeah,
using a Red.
it's true.
These are all tools to get us where we want. Now, I've said it before as well. Some of these tools will make what you're capturing easier, and some of these tools are built and made differently to get different results. I could probably work a little bit harder to get my GH5 to get the results that my Blackmagic produces.
Yeah,
I just prefer the image that comes out of the Blackmagic, and it has a different image, and that's my preference. But some people prefer what comes out of the GH5 or the A7S II
yeah,
or the Nikon Z6. These are tools to tell the story we're trying to tell, and it's easy to get caught up. And we both run a channel that is gear, and I've said this before. We run channels that's gear. I don't expect everyone to spend thousands of dollars. I want to I know my channel focuses on giving you guys resources to make a conscious decision when you do go to spend your money. And
Yeah.
Pop does a great job of that as well. Of, hey, I'm going to give you my honest opinion. Do you need this? Is this beneficial for you? And I think that's where we see all of there's the whole term of gas, gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah.
We see this drop and we're like, I've got to sell my kidney to go get an A7S III. And in reality,
You don't need it.
maybe you don't. You don't. Your Nikon Z6 will do a great job. I
Yeah.
mean,
Or your A7 III, which is
yeah,
significantly cheaper.
significantly cheaper. There are, like I said, there are small things like, the A7 III, know your limitations. The A7 III is going to overheat. Maybe the A7S III doesn't. If you're going on longer shoots, maybe that's a reason why you do look at something like the A7S III. But again, it all comes down to like, what are you filming? What story are you telling? And what
Yeah.
gets you there? So,
Yeah. Knowing your gear as well, it kind of comes back to what I said, people trying things and not be able to use it and they give up. But knowing your gear, I'm sure you're the same, with reviews. When you got something for a very short period of time, you try your best to know how it all works, but it's never enough. It's like, it takes time. It takes time to have it in your hands, to use it all the time, to know and get the best out of it. So if you're not going to use it regularly, why would you want to spend that kind of money on that kind of kit?
exactly. I can't tell you how
Like
many
all
times
the time,
I've
every
gone to,
day,
yeah,
not
I've
just
reviewed
once a month.
I've reviewed items before where I'm like, oh, this is my opinion, and then like a day later, I'm like, well, I'm gonna recant all of that, and it's
Yeah,
not true
been there.
anymore. So, perils of a gear review channel. You have to make a judgment call
Yeah.
in a matter of days.
Yeah,
So,
but I'm saying it translates to real life. If you're doing review like we do of a gear and you do it for 2 weeks, intensively every single day, and someone
yep,
will buy the camera or use the camera and they use it once a month or like once every 3-4 months, they're never gonna know the gear properly. And
yep,
that's my point. That why would you? And people do. Why would you buy a professional camera? It's not gonna make you better photographer because you paid more money or
yep.
better filmmaker. It's that the learning, the using it and knowing what you're doing with it, translates to the results. It's not just the money.
Yep.
It's not going to make you better in anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, so again, if you're just joining us, this is basically a live reaction for the announcement of the A7S III. I did want to run through a couple of these specs again, and I apologize. My daughter's coming in from daycare, so you might hear her in the background. But running through some of these specs again, we've got 4K, 120, 10-bit 422 all internal. 10-bit 422 on all modes, and so like I said before, that's an awesome feature. The new SONY tone, that is something from the FX9 line as well as the
Yeah.
Venice line. So up there with their cinema cameras, which in and of itself is amazing. You have ISO up to freaking 409,600. I have to think about that number for a second.
Yeah, that's
Crazy.
expanded. I think it's 102,000 standard.
This is
You
102,000
mentioned it before.
standard.
I need to chip on this because it's that high number. I don't know anyone who uses 100,000 ISO and
No,
successfully. But if you think normal
no.
everyday filming shooting and
Yeah,
you go to 3,200 and it's a little bit noisy, it won't
yeah,
be on this camera.
yeah.
that's
No,
that's
it will not
so
be.
use the real numbers. You kind of and they still be good. And you go a little bit further, but without losing any quality. Not to
Basically, the
100,000.
A7S III sees in the dark. It has night vision.
That's what they say, but it's
I
not.
imagine that like The Walking Dead are gonna just pick up a whole bunch of these right now. So,
Yeah. TV shows
it's
probably will be picking those for the size
yeah,
more than anything.
yep,
There's one thing
absolutely.
we didn't mention. Obviously, these are all obvious specs. There's one they mentioned: the hot shoe sound, no cables with a dedicated. So you can buy external XLR 4-channel add-on, and you can actually connect it to hot shoe on your A7S III, and it records the 4-channel sound without any cables going to the camera. So easier to handle.
So I saw that, and I didn't look into it all that much because I was focusing on the specs of like the internal specs on the camera. I didn't realize it was hot shoe. So that's very similar to what they did with. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember this, but they did the hot shoe microphone
Yeah,
for a while, where and it was big with like the A6000
yeah.
because it didn't have a
I think it's the
microphone
same, the
jack.
same, the same thing. it transfers the sound through the top of the camera, not the cable on the side.
But it's not a crappy like microphone. It's actually a like
Sony
yeah,
is going
it's
to
a
cost.
sure, sure. But it offers XLR inputs, which yeah, that's a huge point. Like I don't think that the R5 R6 offers XLR.
I don't think I've seen it. Obviously, there'll be options, but
Sure. You
but
can
this
always
is
find
the
like an
way it connect
XLR
the way
like
it
adapter.
connects. I think that's the. I don't think I've seen it before. This I think it's a new thing. I'm not sure. Maybe someone knows better than me. But this XLR module you can connect, with a microphone on it as well. I think it's
Panasonic has one.
personally, I've seen that before, definitely.
But I think that one still plugs in. I don't know, but I know Panasonic has one. So that's really awesome that it all goes through the hot shoe. That's pretty
Especially, I
awesome.
mean, even if it's just a simple mic, not even the XLR, but the standard vlogging. Obviously, they put a screen there for vloggers. You can flip forward, and not having any cables on the side when you're actually handling it. It's a great thing. But how much is going to cost extra? The microphone, the Sony microphone.
Yeah, it's Mark just verified no XLR. You know what? That's the single reason I'm not buying the R5. No XLR. F that. My Blackmagic has XLR. Why can't the R5 have it?
Your Blackmagic got everything.
Not everything.
You will make a coffee if you ask it nicely.
It might. It might. So yeah. So you have the XLR, no overheating, no record limit, which I applaud Sony. And this is again not being super familiar with the R series. I don't know if they actually came out and said there's no record limit on the R5 and R6.
I think
But
that
no,
they did. I think
they
I heard
did.
something about yeah, no recording limits. That's why
Yeah,
he overheats because people going, it's recording a little bit longer than normal, and he goes, you can't even get there with
yeah.
the heat.
Poor Canon. Um, Fully
New menu,
articulating screen, which is a huge deal. What's
new
that?
menu system. That's a big one.
I know I was about to mention that. So, new menu system with the articulating screen. I only imagine the new menu system is to cater to it being a touch screen. But yeah, that's another thing. I didn't see a ton of details about the menu system, but I know
Separate
completely.
photography, separate video menus, which is great. So once you switch over to a movie, you got a whole new menu system just for movies. You don't see all the photography stuff, which makes sense.
So I think Mark just said that it does have a 30-minute record limit. Well, 29.59.
On
Let's
R5.
connect it on the R5 R6. Yeah,
Okay.
unless it's connected externally, then it's
Uh,
unlimited. I think you broke up there a little bit. Sony's still unlimited. Yeah. So new menu system, fully articulating screen, and then external 16-bit RAW, which is amazing. I wish RAW was internal, but at the same time, I get it. Like I said, I feel like Sony went with the little bit safer route, knowing that if they did pack up too much in this camera, they're gonna be right there with Canon talking about overheating issues.
yeah.
So the fact that, and I think this is the summary of the A7S III for me, is you have the Canon R5, R6 with throwing all the specs in there, and then you have the A7S III, which is a little bit more of a safe bet, but kind of like Mark said, where it's full bit still forward thinking, but knowing that okay, we can throw all these specs, and we can argue whether Sony can or cannot, but we can throw all these specs, but then we're gonna have to look at overheating because the other thing to think about is like, okay, well, Sony's already been notorious for overheating. So if they're going to have another camera that's going to overheat, well, it's just going to turn into a reputation of Sony, and I think
Yeah.
that's what they're trying to get away from. And so to me, it
Well,
goes back to the
they did
quality.
say the S used to be for speed, but now it's going to be for superiority, which they actually doing it. Everything works, at the preview so far we've seen, so they're nailing it.
That's fair. I mean, that's really, I mean, a good point because I mean, I do feel like it's turned into their flagship mirrorless. I mean, the A7S II, I mean, let's be real. The A7S II was already their flagship mirrorless, depending on who you talk to. If you're a video person, it was A7S II. If you're a photo person, it's probably the R series. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's not like Apple where you put out like the 10 and then 10s and the S is just like a
Yeah.
small bump in specs. It's their
But
flagship
they
now.
could they
So
could have done that way, but they haven't. That's why we waited for this camera for so long. Because the A7S1, and it was, I think, 2014, and then 2007 A7S2 came out a year after. So you would think be a year or two after we A7S3, but they waited for 5 years before releasing it. So it's yeah, instead of putting a lot of models in between, which will be, yeah, worse or not as good as this one is, they waited and made sure everything works.
do you think it lived up to the hype?
Yeah, I think so. More than that, I think he's got more than I expected from it. I was
I
expecting to be
think,
disappointed. I'm not. So
and
it's good.
honestly, that's both a good and bad thing. Like I think that's the same thing. I think people went in with Canon expecting the same thing of like it's going to be like really bad, and then all the things came out and they're like, oh, this is amazing because like the expectations were a little bit lower. And I feel like the people did the same thing with this, where the expectations was, I mean, I literally just got done saying in my last stream, I was like, oh, there's no way we're getting even 4K 60, and so getting
Yeah,
4K 120, it's just like, so
yeah.
I think I just spit on my mic, but I mean, that's the thing is maybe we should go into these camera announcements with just lower expectations, and then we'll all be surprised and pleasantly surprised.
Don't
So
expect anything, and then whatever they give you, it's a nice surprise.
just like here, take what we
Yeah.
give you. So, all right, guys. Well, I've got to wrap up. I've got to. My lunch break is coming up to an end here. Pav, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And having make sure I think I have a link in the description to Pav's channel. Check out his channel. Check out the XT4 video. Check out the all of the Panasonic videos, Nikon Z6 video,
Sonic,
Sony
Sonic
videos,
lenses.
everything. If you're buying an A7S III, look at some of his lens reviews. He's got plenty in there for good choices. So again,
Thank you.
thank you, Pav, for joining. Thank you
Thank
guys
you.
for joining. As always, go and find your journey. Go embrace life. Stay safe. Be happy. Support each other. Wash those hands, and I'll see you here next time. Peace.